The coefficient may be down, but the drama is going up. Daft own goals and Gasperini. What is wrong with you, man? Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory. I'm back, and I'm joined by my very good friends, Adam and Andrea. Start with Adam. How you doing, man?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Chilled weekend, watching the Wickham, unfortunately drawing 0-0 against Wigan. So that kind of summarised the football this weekend because it was just drab everywhere across the board. But more importantly, how is Mr. Night Nurse Rory doing these days? How was your missus?
Yeah, no, well, exactly. She was, honestly, the illness going round through all these kids at school, it's an absolute nightmare. You might be able to hear it in my voice as well. It's been a rough couple of weeks and not out of the woods yet, guys. And Arsenal definitely not helping, but we'll save that for the next show. Andrea, how are you doing, man?
Coping, yeah. Yeah, I was enjoying the rugby the weekend, to be fair. That's about it. But yeah, it was a weekend.
We're all coming into this like super enthused listeners, so please do stick with us. We promise the energy levels will go up at some point, but we're all struggling at the moment. But there are, you know what? Throughout all this grey and drab part of the year, there's been a light at the end of the tunnel that's cheered us all up. And Andrea, it was, of course, Belotti getting his first goal in Portugal, a 1-0 win over Boavista. We were kind of joking about when he might get an impact, but he's one of the few Italians left in Europe. It's good to see, right?
Yeah, it'd be good if we had him, to be honest, at this point. But again, the agent done amazing, but maybe he had a point. We just didn't see it at the time.
Maybe it was there right in front of you all along. Who knows? But it was great to see him doing his celebration again. It feels like it's been a very long time since I've seen that. Hopefully I'm surprised you remembered how to do it, but hopefully this is the start of great things for him. But Adam, there was a bit of a kind of confusing story in Serie A this week. So of course, in Europe, Lookman missed the penalty, and Gasp, being a kind of stereotypical Gasp, just threw his player under the bus and said Lookman is one of the worst penalty takers that I've ever seen. I don't know why he was taking it. And well, since this, the Atalanta Ultras have put a banner up in support of Ademola and saying to him, like, keep your head up, like, you know, you've done great for this team.
Valued. Very
much sending a message to Gasp at the same time, I think. But with last summer, it looking like Lookman wanted to leave anyway, and with Inter very much on the hunt for an attacker, do we think this could lead to the end of Lookman's time in Bergamo? It would be a shame for it to end like this and for it to be entirely Gasperini's fault.
I think inevitably it does look like it will be the last season that Lookman spends in Bergamo. I think it's pretty much now common knowledge that that will be his last season with Atalanta. But ironically, it could also be the last season for Gasperini because he's not signing a new contract. He's indicated that he's probably going to look at pastures new. I think this is probably a reflection off the back of his comments and the nature of how it's come out, and maybe upon reflection, maybe he realizes that it was ill. Maybe I don't think it's ill timed, but it was clearly an emotional thing that he should have dealt with it much better. But we know this is the problem with Gasperini. He sometimes wears his emotions on his sleeve, but you would expect someone as experienced as Gasperini to know how to kind of deliver those kind of messages, and certain things like that shouldn't be at a press conference, for example. And it was magnificently dealt badly from his point of view. I felt Lookman dealt with it in such fantastic fashion, actually reflected better on Lookman, the whole scenario, personally. And I felt like, personally, I lost a lot of respect for Gasperini off the back of those comments as well. There's still people out there in the social media world that kind of still believe that Gasperini is the boss, and ultimately that players should do whatever the boss says. But ultimately, there's a way that you deal with those kind of scenarios in this day and age. And I'm afraid, he scored a bit of an own goal for me. So, it's weird because, you know, we had so much high hopes for Atalanta this season. It was still potentially there if you look at where they lie in the table and how many points they are off the likes of Napoli and Inter as it currently stands. But yeah, it's bittersweet, it's fair to say, Rory. I mean, what was your thoughts at that moment when that kind of whole debacle kind of rose its ugly head?
Well, I thought It was weird because when I first came to Italy, I was like, "Oh, I like Gasperini," and all my mates were like, "No, he's an arsehole. He's an arsehole." And I was like, "No, he always seems quite nice. He always seems nice enough." And they're like, "No, trust me, he's an arsehole," and he's got a massive track record for this. So I definitely wasn't surprised. I was surprised he started at the weekend. I put Lookman on the bench in my Fantasy Calcio, and of course he scored 2 goals. So I was very disappointed about that. But beyond my own personal pain, I was just, it kind of feels it's just ill-informed, and I think ill-timed is right when you said it, like, because even though Lookman scored 2 at the weekend and it looks like the perfect response, when you've had a weekend where you've arguably possibly kind of got your toe back in the title race, like you've had Napoli slip up, you've kind of got a bit of, to have the manager kind of maybe kill the vibe in the change room so strongly with one of your best players, it could be really ill-timed. Like, Andrea, how did you feel about it? Like, it's not surprising about Gas, but could this take a bit of the steam out of the season, even though they did handily beat Empoli at the weekend?
I think it could definitely take something out of the continuance of their relationship between Lookman going in the future. I do still think Lookman is someone that will get on with it and still play for the team. It's just whether Gasperini might decide to like drop him. But after the backlash that he got from the fans, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I agree with both of you. I just think it was crazy to do it. I mean, he's an emotional guy, and he's always been that type of manager. Like his emotions, his heart on his sleeve, which is a good thing. I like this type of managers, but at the same time, there's a time and a place, and that should have been behind closed doors where they could have figured it out. And notably as well, Lookman, I think, scored the last 5 penalties before that for Atalanta. So it's not like he's been terrible either. So I think to say he's terrible is a bit of a of a weird statement. So I fully back Lookman in this situation. I just think it was horrendous. But yeah, Gasperini has this in him for some reason. I don't know what it is. Old age, I don't know. It gets to them at some point.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. The story I saw today was that Roma are linked to him, and they're kind of looking at him. And I also saw, was that Sarri was linked somewhere as well? But I think there's a few clubs now that like Gasperini has been linked to. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I'm not sure if I see him at Roma, I'll be honest. But that was kind of the main headline that we just missed last week. Now we're going to move to this weekend. And guys, there is lots to talk about. Big drama in the title race as Napoli continue this little bit of a slump, but this time actually lose against a resurgent Como, topped up by Diao. We'll be talking about the impact he's had since he's arrived in the league. Inter against Genoa. I was in the stadium, and I'm able to remember this one, listener, so there might be some insight, hopefully. A very, very boring game, but the second half was okay. We'll be talking about that. Of course, I'm repping the Torino shirt. We'll be talking about the misery that is Milan season as Torino and Milinkovic-Savic earn a 2-1 win over them. And of course, we'll be wrapping up the rest of the Serie A weekend and, of course, talking about that Luca penalty. If you thought Lookman was the most dramatic penalty this week, you are wrong. So we're going to take a very quick break, guys, and when we come back, we'll see you on the other side. And we're back. Benvenuti, bentornati. Let's do it. Now, Como 2, Napoli 1. Diao with the winning goal, the most hilarious own goal you've seen, or maybe the most hilarious goal the own goal of the weekend. There was another one to rival it as well, from Rahmani to open the scoring. But ultimately, Como do get the win. I want to focus on Como a little bit before we talk about Napoli. Adam, their form has been incredible. They're starting to really improve. Diao has now got 5 goals since he came into the league in 8 games. He's scoring against all the top teams. I think this is a really, really clever pickup. I was looking at his career before Como, and it wasn't like he was scoring loads of goals in Spain, or he was like, but for 5 goals in 8 games already, as I said, against the big boys, like he's really given them between him and Nico Paz, a real threat on the break now, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, his kind of rise is something that you have to credit Cesc Fabregas for what he's achieving there in terms of getting him to play these games, play in a certain style as well. He's not afraid to take on his man, got plenty about him. He reminds me of the way that he takes on the ball is a blend between Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal, because he does look threatening every time that he's on the ball, and I think he creates moments for Como. And it's fair to say, that January transfer business that Como did overall was fantastic. bit of business across the board when you look at the kind of defensive lines, they look at the goalkeeping departments that they reinforced, but also the likes of Cacré, who they managed to bring in from France as well, alongside Diao. So Cesc deserves a lot of credit alongside the Como kind of strategy team that they've got down there, because clearly they have ambitions. There was talk about even the likes of Teo Hernandez from Milan being linked with Como, as well as Marcus Rashford. So they clearly are ambitious in terms of their goals. But I put it as part of my notes. I put, will Diao actually see out the rest of the season? Will he be there next season at Como? Because we've been speaking previously about Nico Paz and whether he'd still be there by the end of the season. And look, this is just a lot of credit to the way that Cesc has implemented this style of football. And a lot of criticism was aimed towards Cesc at the beginning of the season as well. If you remember, results weren't great, but he's been able to kind of ride those moments out, get something of, I would say, a better understanding within the group of players. And it's not without a shadow of doubt that there was talent within the squad, but they've definitely improved the kind of levels now. And through Diao, you've got a great outlet, a threat in front of goal. And I think that's what they were missing, really, Rory. And, the way that he took that goal against Napoli was phenomenal. So a lot of credit to Diao and mainly to Cesc, Rory, here.
No, absolutely. I'm really excited about how exciting a young coach he seems to be. It looks like he's really getting his feet under the table. Seeing his celebrations when the final whistle went and how much he meant to him. You kind of forget that Fabregas played under Conte at Chelsea, right? I'm pretty sure they played under him, right? When they won the league.
Chelsea.
And it's it must have meant a lot to him to get that statement win. They've now beaten Fiorentina and now Napoli 2 games in a row. They've clearly got a bit of confidence. But Andrea, before this, they weren't losing games by much, were they? It was 2-1, it was 2-0. They weren't getting Hellas Verona. It wasn't 5 or 6. But is this just that addition of quality in January, as Adam said? As he said, we know that they're the richest club in Italy, right? In terms of their owners, they have the most money. They are very, very ambitious. Was it just a fact of a little bit of time to get that quality bedded in?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think when we look at the start of the season, Fabregas tried to play this kind of style, but it weren't working. They were actually getting even kind of 2-3-0 in certain games. But I think that's the Diao sign. It really gets Fabregas the opportunity to play that style he wants. And I think we're seeing it quite evidently now. And I think that's what's been the exciting factor. And it seems to be those two just kind of do whatever they want, basically, and just have fun and create the chances. And on the counter, they suit them both, because Paz comes deep, gets the balls, really good at that, kind of bringing the into play. And then Diao just makes those runs. So they kind of work well, even though they're on opposite flanks. Their kind of styles work well and balance out the team really well. And I just think, again, even the midfield, Cacré in midfield, I think it's been a great signing. I was a bit sceptical at first, but again, I think he's held down the fort well in midfield as well. So I think the signings they've done have been so smart that they've been able to elevate the team, but also now transition into the style that Fabregas really wants to play. And credit to him, again, being brave in a Napoli team who could easily put them away on a different day. But he was brave enough to go out there and play that way and ultimately get the win, and fully deserved in the end. And yeah, it just seems like now they're at a point where they've beaten, they've won 2 games in a row playing this stuff away. They're going to be not fearing anyone at this point. So, and Diao at the moment, I've got to say, Kvaratskhelia is my favourite player in the league, watching him. Now Diao's that guy. I love watching him. There's something about him, honestly. I really like him. So I think they've just got a special player there that they've got to try and keep on to. That'll be the big question, but hopefully they do, because I really think he suits them really well.
Absolutely, and I think, look, they're now 8 points ahead of the relegation zone now. I'm not going to say this guarantees them, or 7 points ahead of the relegation zone now. I'm not going to say it guarantees them safety, but it puts them in a very good position. And we always knew that if Como stayed up, they were going to have the ability to be able to push on, or at least try to push on and be right, let's attract that next level player now. As you said, they're trying to get Teo in January, right? They're not afraid to put their hat in the ring. And so if they stay up, I would expect to see big business in the summer to try and really push them on and say, right, mid-table finish next, right, Europe after that. They really, because it's been fairly fast moving, this project in general. Yeah. So I think they clearly know the type of player they're looking for and what they're after. I think like Nicolas Paz is such a good pickup. Like the pass through for that, like the assist for the Diao goal, just with the outside of his foot, it's just a beautiful little pass. And as you said, that little understanding between them already. I think Valle at left back as well has just been incredible since he's come in. Like really impressed with him. So just overall a lot more quality, and I think just really nice for them to get a big scalp at home and be like, right, this is us kind of announcing ourselves. And I do still really want Cesc to do well, so I'm delighted that he's looking like a very, very competent manager, which is good. But for Napoli, Adam, this has been coming, right? This result has kind of been coming for a while. They've not kept a clean sheet for a very long time. Was it all summed up by that Rahmani own goal, just where this team is at the minute? It felt fairly kind of symptomatic of how they've been playing recently.
It is, and it definitely has been on the cards for a while. We spoke last week about the fact that Antonio Conte says he's kind of stretched in terms of his squad personnel. I think that's probably a statement to say that he doesn't trust those outside of the 11. And, despite, Raspadori forcing himself into this squad and, having a very good game here again, I think it's very much a reflection of Conte not being maybe happy with the business in January. That said, there's still competent players within that squad that can still help Napoli over the line when it comes to this Scudetto race. But he also referred to the fact that he's had to change his style of football. He's changed the formation. Previously at 4-3-3, now he's back to 3-5-2. And I think there's just that kind of uncertainty amongst a lot of those players at the moment. So you can see it in the style of football they're playing. Even in this game, look, they dominated the possession stats. If you look at it, they had chances. Scott McTominay and Guisa. There was a lot of individuals there that had big chances in front of goal, but they were either tamely taken or overshot. And, this is just that lack of composure that they're having in front of goal. We mentioned last week as well, Lukaku, despite, not necessarily having a bad reign of form at the moment, but you can see he's not utilised or engaged in the same way that we saw at the beginning of the season. We mentioned about how his style of football has changed massively since he's been at Napoli versus the Lukaku that we associate both at, say, Roma and even at Inter. So it feels like at the moment they're accommodating players rather than necessarily playing them to their strengths. And I think it alludes to the fact that, there's a stubbornness with Conte and the style of football at the moment. They could be doing a lot more personally. I think it's just a lack of imagination. If you look at the game based on stats, they win this handsomely. Como just did what they had to do, which was to absorb the pressure and counter-attack them. And they took their moments, more importantly. So I think this is the difference. And like we've said, we've seen this coming for a while, that this defeat would happen. And it feels like it's now boiling over to this next game, unfortunately, because Napoli have got to get a big result against currently the first place team in Inter, who aren't in a great bit of form themselves. So this could be a very fascinating game coming up, because I don't know how to predict it, Rory. We'll
fascinating
go
is a
later.
kind word. I think it's going to be quite low quality.
It's going to be fascinating from a point of view, just the unpredictability. Let's put it that way. The unpredictability of we don't know where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And it just looks absolutely huge now. Like Napoli, no wins in 4 now. So 3 draws in a row and then this loss. We'll get on to Inter as well and how kind of unimpressed/impressed I was with them. But Andrea, with Napoli, there's 3 at the back. They've switched to 3 at back, and since they haven't really kept a clean sheet, or they've not been keeping clean sheets recently, do you think this is a big part to do with it? Is it just it's added a bit of instability to the back? Because before they were winning games 1-0 because they could rely on having that nil. Like, do you think Conte might need to look at going back to the back 4 again?
Possibly, yeah. I think either way, I still think, and I don't want to say it, but it comes back to the Kvaratskhelia thing. Not replacing him. I think that is the big issue at the end of the day. I feel like no matter how they play, for example, when they play at the 3 at the back, they're going to have to rely on Raspadori, who hardly ever gets minutes. So you're expecting the guy who's been on sub for all these years to come on and do something in the second half of the season. You're asking a lot. And then when you switch to the 4-3-3 at the back, who are you going to play out wide? Okafor gets like 5 minutes a game now. Um, and I think the devastating stat, I don't know if you guys saw the stat, is that Kvaratskhelia, when he was there, Napoli were third top in terms of expected goals, goal creations, etc. Now they're 14th since
Damn.
Kvaratskhelia left. So when I said it, well, I think we all said it, but when I said as well that when they didn't replace him, that was it. For me, that Inter are going to win the league because of that, and I still stand by it. I think that's the massive blow. Um, the only thing I can think of is that they try and um, perhaps switch it up, maybe even see if they can change it up in games. Put Raspadori behind it, a two striker perhaps with Simeone and Lukaku up top. But again, substitutions are too direct. It's too like taking off Lukaku in the 62nd minute. Yes, he wasn't having the greatest of games, but that's the guy who scores any minute, any moment. You've got to keep him on. So again, it's that he's got to have that open mindedness to be like, I've got to change this. I've got to change the system. Throw a different span in the work that Como aren't going to expect. And then again, it's so predictable, the subs and everything. So for me, it's just a different attempt, a different change in mentality approach is the only way I can kind of see Napoli catching out teams in certain games. Otherwise, they're so predictable. Like we can name the starting lineup, we can name the subs he'll do, and I think if we can name it, the managers can, and then they can outdo him. So that's the big concern for me. So I don't really think it matters whichever way. I think they need to sort it out themselves in terms of personnel, and then obviously the tactical adjustments throughout the games.
Yeah, I would like to see more variety in that attack. I think you've got a great point with like Raspadori playing behind the two. Because I think in this game, Raspadori, and I think the goal kind of summed up well, like Lukaku's performance as well. Like Lukaku is the closer striker to the defender who's on the ball, and he doesn't. But now I know all their teams have their pressing patterns, and maybe Lukaku isn't the one who's supposed to press, but he's closest to the defender on the ball. But the one who puts pressure on the defender on the ball is Raspadori, running from the other side of the pitch, who manages to harry, win possession, run through, and finish the ball, finish into the net. And I just thought that one clip just summed up kind of where Lukaku's kind of been the last couple of weeks, a little bit lethargic, a little bit off it. And what I love about Raspadori every time I see him play is that's what you get from him. He just doesn't stop running. He presses and he goes. And I think for me, he would be like, in terms of attack, he would be the first name starting in attack at the moment because he's been in really good form since he has come in. He's picked up a few goals and he gives you that dynamism that you need in the Conte system when you need people running constantly. He's going to do it, and I'm just not sure. Well, I'm pretty sure Lukaku doesn't do it. But yeah, it was just all a bit predictable from Napoli, unfortunately. And it did ultimately leave the door open for Inter, because Inter had won the day before. Of course, Inter won Genoa 0, and that is where we're going to go now. Over to the San Siro. I was lucky enough to be there. I think I would say lucky. The first half, to sum this up, listener, the highlights on the YouTube channel, the first highlight was the 54th minute, because I went back and checked. I had visitors this weekend, and that's kind of why we went to see the game. And I thought, please just don't be a terrible game. Just don't be a terrible game. Let there be a goal. And by the end of the first half, I was apologising, basically, like, I promise Italian football isn't always like this. But we're going to talk about that first half a little bit, because I think it says a lot about Inter and where they currently are as well. They started with the rarely seen man, Correa. I said to my godson, like, you're a lucky boy. You're seeing Correa at the San Siro. Not many people get to see this. He started up top, but of course was unfortunately taken off injured. That partnership between him and Martinez, I'm going to go to you, Andrea. It looked so disconnected. I think Inter barely got the ball to them in the first half. It looked like they were afraid of each other, or they'd had a falling out. Like, there was just no attacking movement or connection between them. It was really quite concerning, right?
Yeah, and then the funny thing is, he gets taken off at half-time, so he comes on. It's the exact same story all over again. So no one knows how to play Martinez, or is it just the others the problem? I don't know. Yeah, it was really bad.
It was honestly, and when Taremi came on, again, my godson was like, oh, not Taremi. Even I know he's not very good. I was like, no, come on, let's give him a chance. And he tried that overhead kick, to be fair to him. He did, like he does every match. He tried the overhead kick, but it didn't quite come off. But Adam, the performance as a whole from Inter, I just found it really, really slow, really uncertain. I think a lot of it came from the fact that Martinez was in goal. and it wasn't Sommer. I think there was a lot of nerves around the defence and the midfielder. It was like anything but pass the ball back to the goalkeeper. And I think that kind of stilted things a little bit. But I found it really disappointing in the midfield. Like Aslani, again, he gets these opportunities, but he's just not Çalhanoğlu, unfortunately. And it just felt like the whole performance from Inter was just super stilted.
I think you have to go beyond that. I think there's a lack of confidence amongst that group of players at the moment. You see the form of DiMarco, for example. He's a shadow of his usual self. Barella is kind of running around as much as he can, but he hasn't got that kind of same composure as he normally has sometimes on the ball. As you allude to, the defensive line, a bit nervous. I think they're maybe potentially getting to a point where it needs transitioning. It needs some fresh blood in that kind of defensive lines. We mentioned about Pavard being quite nervous last week. You know, Acerbi, as much as he's been really good for Inter in general, I think this is possibly his last season there for me anyway. I think they need to transition him out. Eventually, he has good games. Even Bastoni has not been brilliant personally. Of late, he's not been brilliant, and he's been fortunate that maybe the opponents haven't been as strong as alluded with this Genoa game. But look, as you alluded to, Aslani, how many more chances does this guy need? I think inevitably it feels like he's going to be one of those prospects that gets sold on to a mid-table club, and maybe he will come good eventually. But unfortunately, he has not lived up to the hype that we saw back in the day when he was at Empoli. But then you also think about the players that are coming off the bench, maybe not necessarily inspiring that kind of performance. And maybe in the second half, they did come good eventually. I think Martinez, actually, myself, I think he pulled off a good save in that second half that kept Inter in it as well.
Massive.
There was an opportunity there, whereas I don't think maybe Summers maybe is agile for that potential opportunity. But look, I think Martinez is definitely one for the future. I think he will eventually be bled in as a replacement for Sommer. Maybe not yet, though, Rory. It's fair to say. But even when we're talking about the goal scorer, Martinez, he's been a shadow of his usual self as well. We normally say he goes through hot and cold patches. But even this season, he's been just... You can't work him out. You can't work out which Martinez you're going to get. And I think it was fortuitous, even with the effort that he did score against Genoa, because it actually gets a deflection off the defender.
It was such a scrappy goal. Like, I think it bounced twice before it went over the line. Like, it was such a scrappy goal. And, like, it felt like the relief in that ground was incredible, because it was, people were getting really frustrated and the atmosphere was kind of turning a bit. And I was like, oh, bloody hell, if they don't score here, it could get a bit nasty. But yeah, the goal was super scrappy, but like no one cared, obviously. I think the whole performance from Lautaro was summed up with the second chance he had, or the chance he had at the end of the game, where he flicked the ball over the defender. Incredible piece of skill. Controls it beautifully, runs directly at the goal, and you're like, right, okay. And he kicks it straight at the goalkeeper, and you're like, Lautaro last year just sticks that top bins and doesn't even think about it, right? And I just think his performance was kind of summed up in that moment. I do have to say, though, Acerbi was fantastic in this game. And without him, Genoa score about 3 or 4, because he was just blocking everything. Whenever there was a ball into the box and there was a player on their own, he was there getting his head on it, getting his foot on it. I think his reading of the game was fantastic. I was really, really impressed with him. But I take your point that, you know, he's no spring chicken, right? But I think this is a performance where he really showed how important he was to that defence, because I think, Pavard was a bit shaky. And Bastoni I thought he played well, but there was just, all I noticed that they just didn't want to give it to Martinez, the goalkeeper, to his feet at all. Because in the first few minutes, there was a few moments where he kind of was like, oh, and he held onto it a bit longer, or he got trapped under his feet. And it just, the whole thing, like every time the ball got back, the whole crowd got nervous. So I think that definitely didn't help. But Inzaghi did bring on Çalhanoğlu and he brought on Zielinski, and I think that was really the turning point for the game at that point. I think that was when Inter really started to put on the pressure. And when they came on, I was like, okay, they'll get a goal now. They will get a goal at some point. But it just shows that maybe they've not got that strength in depth that we previously thought they had. Mkhitaryan was showing all of his age in this game as well. Barella had a great chance that bounced off the crossbar. He was really unlucky. But the team that actually impressed me the most, last thing, Dumfries was terrible. If he gets the ball, and honestly, I was screaming at him, just run forward. Every time he got the ball, he just turned around and passed it backwards. Because I saw, it was interesting, because when you go to a game and then you see the social media out, like people talking about it afterwards, everyone was going, oh, DiMarco was crap, DiMarco. And I was like, he wasn't fantastic, but he was by
No.
far the biggest threat on a wing for Inter because
I can
Dumfries
imagine,
did
yeah.
absolutely nothing. Like, his final ball might not have been as accurate as we'd have hoped, or his shot's not on target, but he was definitely the one that was causing more problems. I thought that was quite interesting because I thought Dumfries was terrible. But Genoa, and Andrea, I'm going to go to you. I was really impressed at how tidy they were with the ball. When they got the ball, it was all very intricate movements, very quick, triangles, and breaking on Inter like every single time. Like, Vieira's clearly managed to get this team quite well coached quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Friendship and Moretti in particular in that midfield holding it down really well. Those triangles, like you said. Moretti even had a chance to score, to be fair, in the later stretches of the game. So in another game, they could have got something. But yeah, they've been quite impressive considering when we looked at them at the start of the season where they were really poor, didn't have any idea. But now it seems to be a clear idea, kind of clear structure. So yeah, it's been going really well for them, and you can kind of see it's elevating to a good level now in terms of like that mid-table kind of level of finish. So we'll have to wait and see, but they still obviously be wary of what's down there. But I think they look like they'll be okay in terms of the way they are.
No, absolutely. And a player I really enjoyed when he came on was Ekaban. When he came on he came on around the 60th minute. I thought he was fantastic when he came on. There was an equaliser, but it was definitely a foul on the goalkeeper. I don't think that one needed to be VAR'd. Messias got a very, very warm reception when he came on. That was nice. And we saw Maxwell Cornet. We were very excited to see him. But the other player that really impressed me was Vasquez in central defence for Genoa as well. I thought he was very, very good. And every time I've seen him, he's looked pretty decent. But I thought he was very, very good. And I was like, okay, going to be keeping an eye on him for the next couple of weeks. I was very impressed with him. But overall, Adam, just a vital win for Inter. Obviously, with the Napoli result going the way it did the next day. Andrea's kind of put his cards on the table where he thinks Inter are going to win it now. Do you think this puts it puts them slightly in the driving seat in terms of 1 point, but do you think it puts them firmly in the driving seat now?
Not firmly. I would say I back Inter in terms of the two right now, but I'm not convinced. I just feel that there will be another defeat somewhere along the line. I don't know where it's going to happen, don't know when it's going to happen, but I feel with the build-up games, especially as potentially they're the only Italian team going into this Champions League now from a coefficient point of view, there'll be probably some expectation now for them to deliver. And the last time they were at this stage, they got knocked out to Atletico Madrid. So I suspect Inzaghi might try and put a little bit more effort into the latter stages of this Champions League now. But he needs to get a tune out of these players at this moment in time because unfortunately, maybe it's his doing in terms of the style of football, but it's just becoming too lethargic at the moment and there needs to be some urgency with this group of players. So yeah, look, I back them for the title, but just not convincingly.
And with Atalanta's huge win, that we're kind of only going to kind of gloss over very quickly, but 5-0 win against Empoli, who look in all sorts of trouble all of a sudden. They are now only 3 points behind Inter, so they're firmly in the title race again. I think it was only a matter of weeks ago we were like, I think they might be out of it. They've managed to claw themselves back into it a bit. So another team possibly on the horizon there that are going to that might trouble Inter more than Napoli if current form continues. But let's go to the next game. I think that's everything into Genoa. I think that was everything from that game. I really enjoyed it eventually. But let's go to the game that everyone was laughing about because it kicked off just before Inter. So everyone was in a very good mood before the game kicked off. Torino 2, Inter Milan. No, AC Milan, sorry. 1. This was the other funny auto goal. This was Thiaw with quite a funny own goal to give Torino the lead. But do you think Rahmani's was funnier, Adam? I think Rahmani's was funnier, right?
100%. He just didn't look where he was doing it, was he? Although it seems to be a common theme. In the last few weekends, we've seen some funny own goals. Previous week, we had Biraghi scoring a fantastic own goal as well for Torino against Bologna, or for Bologna, should I say. And I can't remember what was the other one. There was another one that weekend. But yes, funny own goals. I don't know if this is really harsh on Thiago because it was more Manyan and his decision
It
making
was
here.
mine.
I mean, what was he thinking of? Like, Thiago does all the hard work, but you decide to slam it against his back, and then it was ridiculous. And I think this was the funniest stat about it all. You know, Torino had no shots on goal in the first half, yet they're leading 1-0. Like, typical Milan.
I saw that on my phone when I checked. I was like, what the hell is going on here? But Andrea, it has kind of sparked what has been an underlying conversation about the goalkeeper at Milan. And it's interesting because Milinkovic-Savic was so incredible in this game as well. But a lot of Milan fans have been kind of getting slightly annoyed with Maignan now. He's particularly vulnerable on his near post. He is starting to make a lot of mistakes. Do you think this is something that's like, because the defence in general has been an absolute shit show, that he's just not as sure as he was in that Scudetto winning year? Or do you think the fans are right to be thinking, do we need someone else?
It's a bit of both though, because when you look at it, it's probably like the fourth big mistake he's made in recent games. And at this type of level, it's not really good enough. Like, it needs to be a lot better. However, I still think it's that communication, that defence as well. His commanding of area can be questioned as well, but I do think the defensive side of things, I don't think it's not that secure yet of like who's the kind of main partnership. Maybe that will come with time, but I think perhaps that's what's the issue at the moment. There's no harmony between that defence and then obviously the goalkeeper as well. But it's quite surprising because over the years he's been incredible, and that year they won the league, he was incredible goalkeeper that year. So he's clearly a good player. It's just something's going wrong at the moment. But I think it's a bit drastic to say that he needs to be gone at the end of the season. I still think he's still a good goalkeeper, and it's very hard to find a good goalkeeper out there. Ask Chelsea.
Yeah.
So like again, so I think it's just again it's something to do with that, some sort of harmony between the defense and the goalkeeper situation. But certainly he needs to improve his performances right now because it's getting really bad. Like another key mistake, and again it ended up costing them the game when you think about it because it kind of heads dropped and Torino were a bit more on it, and the game kind of changed. And you know, football at the end of the day is moments. At the same time, as much as you can be the better team, moments still really matter. One goal like that happens, it can cost you the game. So it's vital that these things don't happen. So it's another game where you argue he's cost them the game.
Yeah, it was absolutely shambolic, and just obviously, like you said, like with the current mood around the club and stuff, it's just like another, oh, here we go again. It's going to be one of those days, is it? And then in attack, I saw a great quote from an Italian journalist whose name I've now forgotten, describing João Felix as he is as handsome as he is useless, which I thought was a really, really cutting but very good quote. The attack also just doesn't look particularly up to it. Jimenez has had a very good start to his Milan career. He's got a few goals. He's looked very promising. Leao, I'm getting really fed up of him. I can only imagine what Milan fans think. But again, at the other end of the pitch, Pulisic missing the penalty. It was a great save from Milinkovic-Savic, but ultimately it wasn't it wasn't like a fantastic penalty. It also feels like at the other end of the pitch, Adam, things aren't going quite right for Milan either. Like, there's not a lot for him to be happy about beyond Reinders at the minute, right?
Correct, and I don't think Reinders has been great himself, to be honest. It's a difficult one to put your finger on as to what the issues lie and where the kind of harmony is with this squad. There was rumours about Pulisic maybe not agreeing with Conceicao as well in the build-up to this game. So I think it's fascinating to kind of say that there's nothing across the board that seems to be in sync. There's nothing that seems to be, pulling them in the right direction. And you can see by the kind of, there was a kind of a statement made by the Curva Nord as well about how Milan and general kind of guidance under Ibrahimovic as well as Cardinale is going at the moment. And, they even refer to the kind of Primavera squads as well, that the fact that they set this up and it was taken over by yes men essentially, and they're struggling and they're having to buy in experienced players just to help them out, and it's really across the board. There's some poor decisions being made at the moment. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is though, unless you're kind of saying you need to strip it back again. Unfortunately, they have spent money in the wrong places. Players that probably did fit under the Maldini regime, but they didn't give chances to. The likes of De Ketelaere spring to mind. I feel there's a lack of a spine within this Milan squad, and inevitably it feels like it's constantly going to be the issue until they get someone who's strong-willed, has a philosophy. I don't know. I still believe Conceicao will get a tune out of this team, but it might not be with the same individuals that we see right now. I think personally, you've got to give him till the summer, see what he can do with his own kind of targets, and then we can judge him best. But I think there's a culture issue, certainly, and certain individuals maybe need to benefit from moving on. And it feels like the likes of Hernandez is one of them, for example, Teo. Rafael Leao, as you kind of mentioned, his only involvement was that penalty-ish incident, and apart from that, I don't think he did much. So yeah, I just think there's a combination of issues going on at Milan right now.
Because Zlatan came out this week and said he doesn't work for Milan, he works for Redbird, right? Which has gone down incredibly well, as you can imagine. But yeah, Andrea, they're kind of on the edges of the European places at the moment. They're in 7th. Obviously, the coefficient took a bit of a shoe in this week, so it doesn't look like there's going to be an extra spot anywhere. But do you think there's enough here for Milan to qualify for even the Conference League? Because even 1 year out of Europe for them is not going to help this massive rebuild that is going to be needed.
Yeah, I think so. I think they can get 6th, to be honest. Yeah, I think they can. They can even get. I think that's Europa even. So yeah, I think they can get that position. I see like teams like Bologna, Fiorentina are completely falling off at this point anyway. So there's no one else really. So they should be able to take it. But it's just whether those players kind of step up again. But it's the questions of the Leaos and stuff that, as you guys have said, that's the key, because when they're on form, they'll be up there. So it's just getting that right, getting that balance right, getting those guys on fire again, and they've got the quality to be up there. So definitely, yeah, I could see them.
The only thing I would say is Roma are currently winning 3-0, and even though they've played one more game than them, they are now 1 point behind Milan, and I feel like they're much more upwardly mobile at the moment than Milan are, so maybe that is a team to kind of keep an eye on, that maybe they could overtake them. But yeah, not good for Milan. But let's talk about Torino. Adam, in our Casa Day watch, because now, of course, we're watching him week in, week out, he played very well. I was very pleased with his performance in midfield. We're going to bring it up every week, just in case. But in general, I'm so glad that Torino stuck with Vanoli, because it looked like they were going to sack him after a while when it really, really wasn't going well. We know that Torino are always going to be 10th or 11th, but it's good for him to get this big win. And there are a lot of exciting players in this Torino team, right? There's like a reason to sit and watch Torino now, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think the injury to Duvan Zapata really took the sail out of their wins. They were on a momentum at the very part of the season where they seem to be defying odds, in the top half of the league. And unfortunately, they did have some bad run of form, obviously missing Shea Adams as well in that process when they were struggling. They didn't really have a recognised forward at that point. And I feel like the balance of the squad was just struggling in terms of getting some form together, and as you allude to, could have been very easy for the board to have sacked Vanoli, but they stuck with him. Look, you can guarantee that whilst they might not create a huge amount or dominate possession, they will give a lot of effort, and that's what you saw on the game itself. In terms of Milinkovic-Savic, what kind of candidate you're getting. He's someone that gives his all. He's a kind of shithousery goalkeeper, it's fair to say as well. And I love that about him. I think he's got a big personality. I think that's what you need in the Torino squad. Players like him that provide that kind of charisma, so to speak, but also kind of guide some of the other players within that group of team as well. So look, they're not pretty necessarily on the eye, but they get results. And I think you're going to find that they will yo-yo in terms of positions, but they're a staple of Serie A. They'll do enough to be mid-table, and anything higher would be a bonus for Torino. So glad for Vanoli that he's got this result. Let's see if he can build on it, more importantly.
No, absolutely. And the player who did come on to get the goal, Gvidas Ganaitis, it was a hell of a finish. Very violent, aggressive, heavy
Yeah.
finish, but really well taken goal. And a big moment for him. And I really enjoyed, obviously, Richie in midfield, seeing him again. And Lazaro on the right wing in a much more attacking role. I thought defending has never been his strong suit, so maybe just chucking him up top is a better move. But I think there are enough interesting players in that Torino team at the moment to mean that if you've got a quiet Sunday afternoon, just sit and watch them. There's a few players worth watching, I think. But a huge, huge win for them, and they pile on the misery for Milan. Next, we are going to go down all the way down to... Should we discuss Lecce Udinese first before we make Andrea cry? Maybe we'll give him a few more minutes before he has to talk about it. But your boy, Adam, Lorenzo Luca, is a bit in the mud after this weekend. It was all... Andrea, I'm going to go to you for it, though. Let's break it down in terms of what happened. This is one of the most embarrassing penalty incidents I've seen in my football watching career. Like, I'm not sure what the hell happened.
Yeah, first of all, when there's a clear penalty taker, like it should never be, questioned. But Lorenzo Luca just went crazy, demanding that he's taking it. Lots of players in front of him. He's still saying no, even like the captain. 5 players around him at one point. He's still saying no, I'm taking it, I'm taking it. And then eventually takes it after Torvan just standing there being like, all my years of experience playing football, and this guy out of nowhere is trying to take my job. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then eventually Luca does take it. And then the highlight of it all was the fact that he celebrated on his own. I think that was beautiful. And I gotta back the squad there. The fact that they stay true to themselves, being like, you took the piss there, so we're gonna do it back to you. You celebrate on your own. It was unbelievable. But regardless if he scored or not, is crazy to do that, and it's a bit off-putting because I do like him and I like to see him in the national team, but I'm not a big fan of that. It's not even like it's not even like a cocky thing that looks good on you. Like it looks really poor professional, and I think that's something that I think behind the scenes I'm pretty sure he's been spoken about. At least he hasn't had what I haven't heard. I haven't heard the Gasperini or the Nazi manager doing a Gasperini saying the worst penalty taker. Why did he take it? And shouting at him. But I'm sure behind the scenes they talked about it. But that's definitely something they've got to squash for future games because it looks bad on the club as well.
No, absolutely. It just looks really amateurish. It makes him look like, I don't know how much he needed that goal bonus. Maybe he owes someone money, but like he was really, really desperate to get that penalty. But I also want to live in the timeline where he misses that penalty just to see what happens. Because if he'd have missed that, it would have just been a full-on riot, I think. But he did score it. Udinese did get the win. Adam, it's right, though. It doesn't look great on him as a personality. Is this going to do kind of... The picture at the end of the game is hilarious of him just looking really depressed and everyone else celebrating. But does this do him harm in terms of how people look at him? Because I think it was a really high profile moment.
It will do and it won't, because I think it won't because he's still young. He's still naive. I think that's something that he has credit to his bank. I don't know if that's the right phrase, though, to be fair, because he is 24 years old. So you expect better maturity, should we say. However, it's not great, as Andrea alludes to, because from a professional point of view, can you rely on him when you've got the big moments? And like you say, if he does miss those big moments, then it comes to bite you in the arse, because then you break down that kind of element of trust in terms of your abilities and are you a team player ultimately? I think Kosturunic did fantastically well in terms of managing that situation. And this, despite, like we're joking about the fact that the whole Udinese squad pretty much is having a word with Lorenzo Luca. You even had Lecce players like trying to grab the ball off him and say, "Just give it to Tuvan, let him take the penalty." It was. I've never seen something like that. I've seen moments where like players are deliberating who's going to take the penalty, but like Andrea says, you've got a designated person, you've got an experienced person. Just let him take the penalty, and then you can have your little quarrel afterwards. But yeah, clearly he owes some mafia money, or I don't know. But clearly, it's not looking too pretty on Luca. And look, that probably casts some doubts for the likes of Spalletti in terms of the Azzurri squad as well, whether he actually trusts him to do as he says is the issue. But look, ultimately he did get the job done, so I suppose credit to him.
At least he scored it. At least he scored it. We can give him that. But yeah, that was kind of the only real talking point from that game, and it was big enough. Let's face it. But let's go to the next game. I suppose we're going to finish with this one. Sorry, Andrea. Hellas 1, Fiorentina 0. Obviously, the kind of major moment here was Moise Kean, but from what I've seen, it seems like the tests have been okay. Everything's okay with him. It looked pretty nasty when he was coming off the pitch. So we're kind of obviously we're delighted to hear that everything's okay there. So we're thinking of you, Moise. But for the result, Andrea, that is pretty terrible. The goal at the end was very well taken, I'll be honest. But just sum that up for us quickly. What the hell is going on?
I don't know. I think it's so bad, and I said it on TikTok, but it's true. I turned it off because I've seen it too many times where the first 20 minutes where they're just not doing anything. There's no engagement. There's no passion, no desire to score a goal, and I'm just like 20 minutes. I was like, I can't be asked. I'm switching it off. And in the end, it was the right decision because when you look back, nothing happened. No urgency. Last 7 minutes of the game, you're thinking 7 minutes added on, turn it back on. Maybe there's hope. No, still nothing. Verona then scored the most.
I love that you turned it back on, though. I love that you turned it back on.
Because I can't. It's annoying.
No, of course, absolutely. I can feel your pain, man. Yeah.
But just a comedy of errors again. Why are Fiorentina signing a player from Monza who are in the relegation zone? The guy that makes the mistake, score, and then they score from it, and then I think the worst thing of all is not the fact that he scored, because even if it was 0-0, it was embarrassing. It's the fact that after he scored, they still pass it at the back like they've got another hour of game. No urgency. I don't understand. Yeah. It's not normal. It's not normal. No. It's not. That's why I'm like, I don't know what to say. It's just terrible. Like you cannot play a professional game of football and give nothing. Like not even anything. But when you come to tactical decisions again, I still think would like to have seen Fagioli start the game to dictate the game, actually play in his position and dictate the game. Again, the issue is never replace Moise Kean. He goes off, no one there to replace him. Beltran ain't that guy. I wish he was. I really like him, but he ain't that guy. So they ain't got no one to cover him. So in those moments when Keane's definitely not there, we've got no chance. But when he is there, there's still the element of long ball to him, crossing the box to him holding it up, winning the free kick, tensing his muscles. My highlight is watching him play, tensing his muscles. That's my highlight. It's getting embarrassing, and I think at the end of the day, I look back and I'm like, these wins, like the Lazio away win, the Inter 3-0, they mean nothing. When you lose these games, they mean absolutely nothing. And I think that's what the sad reality is. And it's not been the first season. This has been the last 5 years of my life. Adam said it perfect last time. Jekyll and Hyde. The win 1, lose 2, win 2, lose 2. But again, for me, it goes down to the manager. I just think maybe he's out of his depth. He's got too many players. He doesn't know how to organize the team. Get the best out of them. I think the manager looks out of depth. I don't know what you guys think, but I think ultimately, and I think just one more point I want to add before I let you guys say, is that when you look at the squad, right? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's a good point. When you look at our squad compared to Lazio's, our squad is not a million times, but a lot better. When you talk about depth and quality, it should be better. So there's no excuse. Lazio have a new manager. They have, new players come in, and they've been able to play really well. And I'm not discrediting them because they're actually a good team. I'm just saying, if Lazio can do it, why can't we do it? So that's when I look at the manager.
No, I think you're absolutely right. That's the level you should be aiming to be at. Like, you know what I mean? You should be challenging the likes of Lazio and getting for those Europa League spots and really pushing. And it is just, I find it fascinating with Palladino that it does seem to be very streaky. Like, there was that huge winning run, but then the second you lost, it was like loss, and he wasn't really able to arrest that slide. And then, as you said, it's just since then it's just really inconsistent. I found it really frustrating watching Zaniolo. I thought it just kind of summed up everything that I predicted him to be. I thought it was really frustrating watching him. But Adam, I'm going to go to you. I saw this week Palladino linked to the Atalanta job. Like, it's clearly not damaging his reputation. And does that surprise you? You'll be giving away another manager quite happily at this rate after Italiano. You're giving them all away.
Yeah.
I'm massively surprised given the season that he's had with Fiorentina, because I from one side I can understand why they're kind of targeting a Palladino, but from another, I just kind of say, look, he's not necessarily there yet. I mean, I there's a lot of candidates out there without a job that I would probably say rank higher than Palladino. The likes of Gilardino, for example, I rate higher than Palladino right now. Even Maurizio Sarri is another one that's linked with the Atalanta job. He's someone that I would far say is a better suited candidate for that role. But ultimately, look, I suppose what he's got is being young Italian, aspirational, and look, there are moments where Palladino looks like he is kind of, as you allude to, maybe showing signs of that maturity, but I don't think he's there yet. I don't think he's capable of taking on and I don't want to say it's derogatory to Fiorentina as big a job as Atalanta, but I also feel that's the levels that he's at the moment, that actually, you know, that's where the scales are right now in terms of where both those clubs are currently ranked. You know, I would have seen yesteryear Fiorentina being ranked higher than Atalanta, you know, and I think that's just the way it is right now. So if that happens, then I think Fiorentina are laughing, because there are better candidates out there. And I think they would, as to Andrea's point, I think someone could get a better tune out of these current group of players. But I also would say, look, Palladino is missing a few of the key players through injury. The likes of Yassin Adli, for example, I think when he's on song, he can definitely bring something out of that midfield potentially. I've never been too sure about Colpani this season. I don't know what's happened to the Colpani that we've been used to. Goodmanson, I don't think he's played, 2 games maybe fully. I've never seen him play consistently for this Fiorentina side. And I think the Bove injury situation has been the big one for them, because whilst they have addressed it by getting Fagioli, Bove was the kind of player that breaks up the play and passes it on, and I think they're missing someone that disrupts that midfield. That's what they were lacking in this game, is someone that can just break it up and push that intensity within that group of players. That you didn't see it. They're completely disjointed. They make a mistake. They're very lethargic. And one scene that summarized it best was what Andrea was describing with Pablo Mari, where it gets twisted by Bernardi. And it's like, it's still slow motion, but he's still got enough power within him to get up and do a sliding tackle or something. But it's like he almost accepts that it's going to be a goal. It is so weird. I can't, I've got to get that clip and just show it, because it what I'm saying doesn't probably justify it. But Pablo Mari should do better. And he's just watching the ball go in the back of the net. And it's just like, you must feel helpless, Andrea. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's it.
I should have warned you about Pablo Mari. Like, bloody hell, the dark days of Arsenal having him. Like, Jesus Christ. He did. I wasn't surprised. It looked very, very similar, or very familiar to me, I'll be honest. But we do have to very quickly give Verona a bit of credit, I suppose. They stuck in there. They got the job done. The goal was very well taken, even though it was a bit of a comedy of errors. Just that last little touch, waiting for the defender to go past to then put it in the opposite corner. I thought it was a very calm finish. And of course, that kind of means that Verona now, they are currently 5 points above the relegation zone. And if we know anything about Verona, that means they're not going down and they're going to be with us again next year. I think that might have just secured their survival, I'll be honest. So there's good news we can all be happy about.
I wanted to add one more thing about Verona, right? What sums it up even more is the best player on the pitch, Valentini, for Verona. Incredible. Fiorentina player. I said when they signed him, I was like, he needs to be in the team. They lowered him out, and he's the best player on the pitch. He can pass, he can tackle. it's embarrassing, honestly. Sorry, I had to add that, but
No, you're absolutely
I
right,
want to
T.
add on the Verona side of things. Like for another player that impressed was him. I thought he was outstanding in that game and really controlled
Yeah.
that defensive line.
Well, he clearly had a point to prove. He clearly had a point to prove that day. But good. Elsewhere, the last of the Serie A results. Let's run through them quickly. As we said before, Empoli 0, Atalanta 5, Lookman with 2, Zappa Costa with 2 is a bit mad. Whoever had him in the Fantacalcio had a very, very lucky. Oh no, he got 1 in the end. Oh, the other one was no goal. That's unlucky. So 1 for Zappa Costa. Juve scraped a 1-0 win against Cagliari. Goal coming from Vlahovic, of course, before he scored off the pitch with the videos that we saw leaked there. Roma won 4-0 against Monza. They're just in. Cristante has scored a goal. Cristante in the 88th minute to make it 4-0. Angelino, this is the most random list of goal scorers. You ready? Cristante, Angelino, Shomurodov, and Silemakers as the 4 scorers for Roma this evening.
Mental.
Yeah, incredible. Roma fully on the charge there. And I think that's all the results. Just going to very quickly refresh my page. Parma 2, Bologna 0. You're absolutely right. Bonnie is actually, him being forced to play is improving Parma quite a lot. But Bonnie scored the penalty, Som with the second. Bologna just being Bologna. They were terrible, but Parma got the job done. And Lazio drew 0-0 with Venezia. I instantly forgot that game had happened the second the final whistle went. That is all of the Serie A action this weekend. We're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about next weekend. There's a big one coming up. We'll see you on the other side. And we are back. It's time to look forward to some Coppa Italia action and Serie A. Here's Adam with all the fixtures.
So if you're listening to us on Tuesday, you will see that at 8 p.m. we've got Inter at home to Lazio. Before on Wednesday evening, we've got Juventus hosting Empoli, and that's again 8 p.m. UK time. Then we move into round of 27 fixtures. On Friday, we'll start off at 7:45, where Andrea's beloved Fiorentina will give him more despair as they take on Lecce. Before we then move into the Saturday fixtures, starting at 2 p.m, we've got Atalanta at home to Venezia, followed by at 5 p.m, the big game, Napoli at home to Inter. Before at 7:45, we've got Udinese at home to Parma. Then we move into Sunday's fixtures, starting at 11:30. We've got Monza at home to Torino. Before at 2 p.m, we've got Bologna at home to Cagliari. At the same time, we've also got Genoa at home to Empoli. Before at 5 p.m, we've got Roma at home to Como. And then the big game on Sunday, 7:45 p.m. kickoff time, Milan at home to Lazio. And then finally, on Monday, the 3rd of March, we've got Juventus at home to Hellas Verona for a drab 0-0, no doubt. So that is your round of fixtures, Rory. But more importantly, we're obviously going to talk about the big game, this group, or round, should I say, and that is Napoli versus Inter. We talked about it offline. How do we feel the scoreline is going to go? And more importantly, who's going to take this momentum? Start off with yourself, Andrea. How do you think the game's going to go?
I think Inter are going to win comfortably. I'm going for a 2-3-0 win. Inter.
Oh, what about yourself, Rory?
Wow, I was going to be much more conservative than that. I thought it would be a draw, I'll be honest. I was just looking at their last record. The last 2 games have been 1-1. Inter last one in Naples in 2024, so the beginning of last year. Although their record in Naples, looking at it, is actually pretty good. I'm going to say it's going to be. I'm sorry, I know this isn't what you want to hear, listener, but I'm going to say it's going to be another 1-1 draw. I think they're going to kind of settle on this, and Atalanta might be the big winners of the weekend as they're going up against Venezia.
I'm going to go for a draw myself, but I think it'll be a score draw of 2-2. Personally, I think there might be goals. I don't really trust either defence at this rate, so I think that's likely to happen. But Rory, apart from that, how are we feeling about Milan and Lazio? That's probably the other big game this weekend.
Lazio have to win that, really. I feel like, obviously, there's going to be so much like the pressure is building on Conceicao so much already. Even though, but although I feel like he's kind of in the Amorim boat at the moment, where everyone's just like, "Oh, let him off." Have you seen that lot? But I think it's just absolutely huge that they get a win. But I can fully see like Lazio love turning up and ruining people's days. So I think I'm going to say Lazio get a big win there.
Ooh, what about yourself, Andrea?
I'd go for Milan. I think they'll turn up 3-1 Milan.
Nice.
Ooh, I'm going to say I'm going to say 2-0 Lazio. I fancy it. I fancy Ravella potentially being on the scoreline for this one as well.
Narrative. We would love to see that. Well, guys, listener, that is everything for this week. I think we've done all the Serie A action. Of course, don't forget to check out the Coppa Italia midweek as well, because I think Inter Lazio could be a really interesting game there as well.
Yeah.
Guys, anything to say to the listener before I let them go home?
No, enjoy the football.
Beautiful. Well, listener, thank you as always for choosing to spend your time with us. It means the world to us. Make sure to go and check out our Premier League episode. Again, the title race is officially over. RIP to my dreams. Go and check that one out. As always, you can find us on all the social media at Anglo-Italian Pod, apart from Twitter, where we're at Italian Anglo Pod. Make sure to give us a rating and subscription on your podcast app of choice. Give us a review if you're that way inclined, and we will love you forever. Guys, go check out the Premier League episode. We'll see you next week. Ciao, a dopo.
Ciao, ciao.